Hey everybody, for today's video, let's talk all about my experience with Lorazepam, or also known as Ativan by its brand name. I just kind of wanted to take you guys through my experience and my journey with taking this medication. I began taking Lorazepam back in December of 2019. And if you're familiar with my POTS story, and I'll link it up above, you'll know that I was first given Lorazepam in the ER when I first began exhibiting symptoms literally overnight with POTS, or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So I had woken up and I was just out of my mind with these feelings of panic and adrenaline, and fight or flight response was completely engaged, and I had no idea why. At the time I thought it might just be like an intense panic attack, but my body was also shaking like crazy, and it did this for like a 24-hour period. It wasn't just like my body would shake and then I would calm down. It was pretty intense. So after a while of that, I went to the ER that day, just completely freaked out. I just felt like there was something wrong with my body. It did feel like panic, but it felt completely beyond that as well. It felt physiological in nature. Of course, at the time, I had no idea what I was dealing with. And of course, the doctors at the ER did not either. It took a long time. I remember sitting there in the ER in a wheelchair because I couldn't even walk, and waiting with my husband and just shaking and shaking and shaking and just feeling completely insane and wondering what people were thinking about me, if they were staring. My body was just trembling, and I was so scared for my life. It just felt like, my body was going nuts. So after like a long time of waiting in the waiting area, I finally got put in a room where I continued to wait for what seemed like forever. Like, it was a long time. I guess they were really busy that day. And then a nurse came in and talked to me a little bit, and then she left for another long time, and then she came back in, I think maybe 2 other times, and then she gave me this pill, and she didn't even tell me what it was at first. And I'm like, okay, so what am I taking? And she's like, oh, it's Ativan. I'm like, okay, so what is it? I mean, I'd heard of it before, but obviously in my state of mind at the time, I couldn't even think straight. So I was like, what is this? She's like, oh, it's just gonna make you calm down. And I was like, okay. I was all for it. Usually I'm really afraid to take new medications, and I overanalyze and I think about it for like ever, but I was in such dire straits. I was like, okay, give me this pill, I'm taking it now. So she had me take that, and she told me that it should start working within about 20 to 30 minutes, maybe a little bit earlier, since I hadn't even eaten in like 24 hours. But I took that, and I still continued to shake. I felt a little bit of relief, but not completely, and I was still shaking. So I could feel my mind start to calm down a little bit, but when she came back in, she was like, so how are you doing? Expecting me to be completely just, fine. And so she gave me something else when I told her I was still feeling, not so good. She gave me hydroxyzine on top of that, which, if you don't know what that is, it is like a pretty heavy duty Benadryl type medication. It's usually prescribed for allergies and skin rashes, or even for anxiety as needed. They don't know why exactly, but it does tend to work on anxiety for a lot of people, and they give it to people sometimes before medical procedures and such. So with a combination of 1 milligram of the Ativan, and then the I think it was 25 milligrams of the hydroxyzine, that's when I finally stopped shaking, calmed down, and was just completely out of it. I just felt drugged and like bleh. But a doctor, or I'm not sure if it was even a doctor, but some medical professional came in and basically told me, it's just anxiety and panic attacks, and talk to my therapist, blah, blah, blah. So that's how I was first introduced to Lorazepam. And yeah, I don't think they only gave me it that one time in the ER, and it was just that one pill. And then I went home, and as you know from my other stories, if you've seen them, I did not get better. It just, it worked for the time, for a little while, to calm me down. And then I was right back in this fight or flight state, really freaking out and wondering what's wrong with me. I thought I was going insane. I would sit outside in the freezing cold And because I was so hot inside, but I was also freezing and I just didn't know what to do. I was feeling really hopeless. I was like, okay, I guess I've cracked, or my body is like, something's really wrong with me, but nobody's telling me or doing any tests on what it could be. So again, I kind of freak out, and then we go to the ER a second time. So this next time at the ER, I was in even more of a mental state of just, what is wrong with me? I just don't feel like myself. This is beyond just normal panic attack and anxiety. And I also felt extremely weak every time I would stand up, and my heart would race. Before I was admitted to, well, not admitted, but like when they take you to the triage room or whatever. Before I was taken back there, they did some vitals, and my heart was like high 150s. And one of the doctors, or whoever it was, it's never actually a doctor, but a nurse or something, said, well, maybe I think this is just, anxiety once again. And then the other person was like, that's pretty high even for anxiety. I think this might have something to do with her heart. So at that point I was like, oh, but at least we were getting somewhere. And so they did like a D-dimer test, 2 tests for blood clots, and blah, blah, blah. I know this video isn't about my POTS story, which is kind of what it's turning into, but it's just, I'm kind of laying the groundwork for why I was given Lorazepam. So skip all that. I get in a bed and hooked up to the monitors and everything like that so they can monitor my heart. And so anytime I would move or sit up, the monitors would go off, and my heart was like in the 130s, if I remember right. And it was really strange, and it was actually reminiscent of the times I was pregnant the last 2 times, because I had severe tachycardia with pregnancy. Anytime I even just moved my finger, like it would go crazy. So it kind of reminded me of that, but I knew I wasn't pregnant, and they didn't know what to make of it. They were all just saying anxiety, anxiety, anxiety. And the nurse brought in another Lorazepam. He's like, have you had this before? I was like, well, yeah, one other time when I was in the ER last. And again, they told me to talk to a psychologist. I told them I already had one. Yeah, they had nothing. And the D-dimer came back completely normal, as did the EKG, and they also did blood work that time. I don't know what they were looking for, but everything was fine. So again, they are left with telling me it's all in my head and anxiety, and just, take this Lorazepam. They even prescribed me, I think, like a few pills to get me through the weekend, and then they told me to see my primary care and talk to them about my anxiety and my psychologist. So it did calm me down that time, and I was like, okay, this could be something useful until we figure out what's going on with me. So I believe I got to see my primary care a few days later, and I talked to her about everything that was going on. I believe at that time she was under the impression it was also just anxiety and panic attack. I talked to her about Lorazepam, and she was really hesitant to prescribe me Lorazepam. She does not like benzodiazepines, and she made that very clear, but she thought, given my history of panic disorder and things like that, that's what we were dealing with, and maybe I just needed a little bit while I worked through this with my psychologist. So I was like, okay. And she prescribed me like 20 days worth of the Lorazepam, and literally on the bottle she wrote like a novel, like, never take more than 1 a day, only take if you cannot, work through your panic attack with your training and the things that you've been taught in order to calm down. Please only take, half a pill. It was like an hour-long blip about her hate for Lorazepam, basically, which now I understand. But so I was like, okay, I have this emergency medicine, and I'll only take it as needed. Well, as needed was pretty much every day, but I was only taking like a quarter a day at that point, and it was still, working really fine for me. I saw my psychologist, and at that point she thought I was in like a PTSD flare-up, and she agreed that I should take the Lorazepam in order to function. And I believe I saw her just that one time, and then again soon after that. And at that next visit, she kind of looked at me funny and was like, hang on a minute. And she was doing some research on her computer, and she thought, that maybe this was more than just something psychological, but rather something physiological. And now, of course, we know that I have POTS. But back to the Lorazepam, I went away, you know, still taking that. I believe I was taking just a quarter of a pill, and then I slowly, I think a quarter in the morning and a quarter at night, and then I was just taking a half in the middle of the day, and I was doing fine with that. It really didn't have like a drugged out effect on me. I felt completely normal. I wasn't anxious or afraid or worrying. It just made me feel normal and like I was before any anxiety or panic would set in. So I actually really liked the drug because I had no side effects. I wasn't even feeling overly tired. Now, in the beginning, I took like a whole pill, like 1 or 2 times only, and that made me feel like tired, but just in a relaxed way, like I could go to sleep, but not like, oh, I feel drugged. So I was really happily surprised with the Lorazepam, and I continued to just take like half a pill. So let's fast forward a few months and say it's like March of 2020. I'm still taking the Lorazepam, and usually a half to 3/4 of a pill a day. At this point, I felt like it was helping me function, and I was a little afraid to stop taking it because I felt like I couldn't function without it. Even though it was such a low dose, I'm really sensitive to meds, and that dose was doing fine for me. The only time I ever took a whole pill was maybe once or twice in this whole time, and that was when I was under like severe stress or had a certain place to go to where I felt really anxious. And again, that always made me feel really calm. But dealing with my POTS and the type of symptoms that I get, a lot of it involves like fight or flight response and feeling really anxious and overwhelmed. So that's why I continued to take it. And, you know, a few months goes by, March, April, May, and I just, you know, I want to come off of the medication, not because I don't feel it's useful or like I need it, but because it's a benzodiazepine and it is not good to be on long term. Usually it's just prescribed like for 3 months up to 6 months, but it's really not suggested to take longer for that. And I was coming up on 6 months, and so I really wanted to come off of it, and I thought it was going to be so easy, especially since I was on such a low dose, especially compared with a lot of people who take many milligrams several times a day. So I thought it was going to be like cake to come off of it, but it really wasn't. I started trying to take like, so I worked up I think to about 3/4 a day, so I was back to a half a day, did okay, and then trying to take a quarter in the morning and a quarter at night, and I would do good for a couple of days, and then something really stressful would happen, or I would have a really bad flare day and I would take more, so that kind of hinders your progress. So it was kind of like a back and forth battle of, in my mind, of I need to come off of this out of principle, and because it's not good for me, you know, then also the other side of me saying, no, it's okay, Whitney, you know, you kind of need this to function right now. You don't need to be ashamed of it. It's okay. So I was going back and forth and driving myself crazy and talking to my psychologist about it. And she said, you know, try not to put too much pressure on yourself. It's okay if you need this for now to function. You'll be okay. It's a really low dose. I'm not worried about you. You're not abusing it, and things like that. So that's how it was going for the first 6 months or so on the Lorazepam. So I would go another couple of months thinking, okay, it's all right to keep taking this, you know, kind of slowly approaching the 8 to 10 month mark. It's like, I really don't want to be on this, but don't freak yourself out. You're fine. You're taking a small dose and it's really helping you to function. So I did okay, and then back to the whole, I need to get off of this, I need to get off of this. And again, I thought, you know, that the experience was going to be a lot different and that it would be so easy to stop. And that's one of the reasons why I'm making this video, is to illustrate the power of the benzodiazepine and the fact that your body becomes dependent very easily on it. And there's a difference between being addicted and, you know, abusing the drug and being dependent. Your body literally gets used to having it every day, and usually you need more to maintain the same effect. For me, fortunately, I haven't like built a huge tolerance to it. I'm still good on the really low dose, but it's just the fact that it's so hard to come off of, even at such low doses. You feel your body literally going into withdrawal if you've gone, you know, around 20 hours without it, and it's not fun at all. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. It hits you like a ton of bricks, and you just feel so helpless, and you're hot, but you're cold, you're shaky like crazy, you're anxious, you're moody, you're angry, like all the bad things. It's not fun, and I just want to make it clear that that's coming from someone who has taken such a low dose, you know, 1 milligram daily or less usually. So I just really want to reiterate that it's not something to mess around with. I do believe it's useful in a lot of instances, and it certainly has been for me, but to really, if you're considering starting taking this, to do it with extreme caution and to know what you could potentially be getting into as far as the difficulty coming off of it. It is now January of 2021, so I have been on the Lorazepam for just over a year. Not something I ever thought I would be taking in the first place. I never thought I would take a benzodiazepine. I'm more of a, you know, I try to approach things naturally, but this was just something I could not handle on my own. So yeah, I'm still taking, after many tries of trying to come off of it. I know it might sound silly because people are probably like, you're taking 1 milligram, just half it, and then half that, and then half that, and then you're good. But it's like I've tried that several times, and I just haven't found that perfect combination or way of tapering off. I've tried doing the gradual taper, and I'm going to continue to. I think for me, it's just going to be a matter of willpower and not giving in to those feelings of, oh, I need to take more Lorazepam, you know, this little tiny piece or quarter is not enough. I need to just beat this. And I think a large part is your attitude and your mindset, and knowing that you can totally do it instead of giving in so easily. But it's so hard to give in when things are stressful or when you're sick and you don't feel well, and it helps you to relax and not be so anxious. So that's kind of where I am. The goal is still to get off of the Lorazepam, and hopefully soon, but I'm trying not to put too much pressure on myself. I also have a little bit of the hydroxyzine that the hospital gave me, and my psychologist at one point told me that it could be helpful to take that during times that I'm trying to taper off, to help with ease some of the anxiety and the withdrawal symptoms. So I might talk to my doctor about that and maybe get some more and see how that goes. But yeah, I wanted to make this video just for anyone who's curious about Lorazepam, or anyone who may be looking to try it. It can be super helpful and help you to function in your daily life, but it's also a big decision, because it's not something that you can easily come off of, and the withdrawal is not fun. So just kind of keep that in mind. This is kind of something really personal. I don't know why. I didn't really think I would share my story with Lorazepam. I don't know. Sometimes it just makes you feel like less than a person or weak because you need it. But I know that it's just a fact for me that it has been really helpful in helping me function since the start of my battle with POTS and dysautonomia. So I hope that I helped at least one person with this information. Please let me know down in the comments if you have any questions about my story or things that I may have left out. And I hope you're having a wonderful day, and please subscribe and like this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.